Logistics is sorted out. Let me welcome everyone back to this session, which very compellingly asks the question if Central Eastern Europe is the key to the European Union, whatever that means. And we're going to try to find out. My name is Oana Popescu-Zamfir. I'm director of Global Focus Center, which is a think tank, an independent foreign policy think tank based in Bucharest, Romania. And I'm very happy to have with me a very good lineup of speakers. To my left is Iveta Radičová, former Prime Minister of Slovakia. Andor David, Director of the International Visegrad Fund. Klaus Offe, a sociologist, political sociologist and academic. And Sławomir Dębski, Director of the Polish-based Institute of International Affairs. We will try to keep this as interactive as possible. So, if all the speakers agree, I will try to keep. I will ask you to keep your initial remarks very brief, if possible. You will have a chance to get back to them in the later rounds, so that we can open it to the floor as soon as possible. And let me just by way of introduction start with a few random thoughts, because we have the results from elections in Budapest and national elections in Poland. So I simply cannot help linking today's discussion with what happens in the two countries, because it's really significant. And I'm thinking, first of all, the title, and I have no idea what the organizers meant by the title, but I think it's something that each of us has to explain. I'm just going to enumerate a few things that are often said about Central Eastern Europe. One, that we are the future of the EU because we still believe in the European idea, because we appreciate freedom since we regained it the hard way in 1989. We haven't, or at least some of our generations have not, were not born with it. The second idea is that we feel persecuted and frustrated now, that we feel that there's this East-West divide and we're on the wrong side of it. The Eastern Europe has not really received much in the new European Commission and the post-elections arrangement at EU level. Romania and Hungary had their initial proposals for commissioners rejected. There are books and there are academics who say we're quick to embrace the West and being part of the EU, but then we quickly became frustrated that we were not rich enough, we were not as rich as our Western counterparts, or that our expectations had been, that we were disillusioned, let's say, with the results as compared to expectations. The other thing that is often said about us is that we shoot ourselves in the foot, because we are frustrated, but we react in sort of along the line of, I'll kill myself if you don't love me. Right, which never seems to work in international relations or in life, perhaps. And then to link it to the recent elections, one of the questions that I will be posing to the speakers is, when we say Poland or Hungary or Romania or Slovakia, the Czech Republic, they hold a key to the EU's future. Which Poland are we talking about, or which Hungary are we talking about? Half of Poland that voted with peace again, and they consolidated their control over the Sejm, and they have absolute majority, or the other half that essentially voted against peace, which has lost control over the upper house, for instance. Which Hungary? The one that's been voting Viktor Orbán for the past many years, or the one that's just voted in a new mayor of Budapest, and not just in Budapest, but in many other cities. So with this, let me open the discussion, and I will use my privilege as a woman to kind of promote gender balance by inviting Iveta to go first, and see if you can answer at least a few of these questions or give some insights.
Thank you very much. I hope we will enjoy our common time, and I hope the equal time for discussion the audience will have, so we really can try to find the answers, not too easy questions. From my point of view, first of all, first argument, Europe and EU is living the best time in our history. And usually we have forgotten to say this sentence. After the years of colonization, then self-destruction and 2 world wars, then Cold War, then the wall between 2 parts of Europe, really we enjoy the time of the most freedom we have ever had, the most democracy we have ever had, and together with economic transformation in this part of the region. This is without any doubt the truth. But, and here the problems start, but there are real, still very deep differences among the EU member states. First dimension, socio-economic. The poverty and material deprivation, and I hope Klaus Offe will speak more about this issue, is really from 50% in Hungary to 1% in Sweden. From half of population to near 0 of the population. If you have a look on family life and family support, once more, there is deep difference among and inside the countries, how they cover not only not human rights at all, but except political and civic rights, social rights. Deep differences. If we have a look on a legal state and developed democracy, we are facing deep differences. From full democracy regimes through pseudo-democracy to authoritarian or hybrid democracy like we see it in Hungary or in Poland. And last but not least, EU integration process is at different status. So 27 countries, 28 still, are the member states of EU. Some of them are in Schengen, some of them are in Eurozone, some of them has agreed on European prosecutor, some not. So there are different segments of the level of integration. And this division is not based on East and West or South and North, but clusters of different groups of the countries depending on the level of their legal state, democracy, and social and economic situation. So if we try to speak about Central Europe, yes, it's because we have in history something in common, but also deep differences and some cross-border experiences which were war and peace. So everything together. Yes, this region can be the promoter of EU idea, mainly because we are the fresh blood inside and fresh wind inside EU. But are we behaving as a fresh blood and fresh wind? Very often, we are facing reactions like small child, always in opposition. No, no, no. And it's time to say also what different we would like to see, to be a bit positive, and not to be only as really prepared to criticize and not to put on the table really good common idea. It's not enough to say the words against migration, it's time to say what to do. It's not enough to say the words against more integration, it's time to say, but what next? It's not enough today to say, no, you will not connect rights and legal state with financial support, okay, but what we are prepared to do to improve legal states. So, to be more positive is a challenge, and I hope we are prepared. If there is, and this is the last comment, and what kind, and your question, of political representation. It's complicated for our new Madam President to negotiate with presidents from 3 other countries of Visegrad 4, because yes, there is a difference, and not only based on gender. And she tries, based on diplomatic issues, but the vision of future of EU, the vision of cooperation is really different from Madam President in Slovak Republic and other presidents from other countries. The same we can conclude depends what kind of government is the winner in each country. And my hypothesis is that because of social economic situation in these countries, as we have done the jump, still the expectations are not fulfilled among citizens, so are still crucial, then not legal state, but social policy and social packages are the topics which can win elections. Well, this was visible now in Poland, this is visible in Slovakia, and I'm not so sure what is visible in Czech Republic.
Well, in line with what you're saying, that we should be more proactive, that we should be more constructive, that we should also make proposals and not just oppose proposals from others. Let me pass this on to Klaus Offe, because you mentioned, you emphasized so much the existing inequalities.
Yes.
And let me turn to you to ask you, are we talking about the East-West divide, as I said earlier, or are we dealing more with divides within our own countries? And I'm looking again. I was looking at the results in Hungary, and we have the big cities versus the smaller cities. We have the old boys club, as it has also often been termed, around Viktor Orban, and then we have a lot of young people in the opposition. But then again, do our political preferences reflect these social divides, or do they not? Because after all, everybody seems to have gathered around the politics of redistribution to some extent in Poland, in Hungary. What do you think?
Okay. Let me start with a personal remark. In 1992, I decided to join a 10-year project on the transition transformation that happens in, was happening at the time and still going on in Central Eastern Europe. I'm the only one on the panel who is not from the region. I was never a citizen of a Comecon or Warsaw Pact country. I found this fascinating because it's a unique case in history that a authoritarian state socialist system is transforming itself into a capitalist democracy, or democratic capitalism, as you wish. And this process, actually the study, at that time we had the good fortune and the helpful assistance of a young sociologist from Bratislava, Iveta Radicova, who helped a lot in the project. And this transition from socialism to capitalism, unique and unanticipated and welcomed on both sides of the Iron Curtain, started with one important act, which triggered an entire process of 20 years. And this is what I call the Copenhagen deal. The Copenhagen deal basically said, you, the new or prospective new member states of the EU, normalize, that is, adopt our liberal democratic institutions, including the capitalist order of the economy. And in return, and if you behave, and if you make progress under the auspices of conditionality, then you will be admitted to our club of EU 15, and prosperity, democracy, progress, convergence, and whatever will be yours, right? Okay, this deal that was conceptualized in the three Copenhagen premises of 1993 did fall apart. Both sides of the divide between West and East, I mean, EU 28 consists of the old 15 plus the new 13, two of which are 1.5 Mediterranean islands. All the rest are post-communist, right? So it's a long story, much too long for a short statement. This ended in mutual frustration. The West, the old member states, the EU 15, perceives that this is not working for some reasons that are hard to pin down and to locate exactly. Liberal democracy is not what we associate with as a descriptor of the present conditions in Visegrad and beyond. And also the convergence, the promised prosperity and the rapid integration did also not take place as expected. So on both sides, this resulted in frustration. And I mean, compared to the celebrations, celebratory speeches that were given 10 years ago on the 20th anniversary, today's mood, today's speeches, today's vocabulary is much more sober and ambivalent and less certain of the success that has occurred, and rightly so. I consider, coming to your question, I consider the divides that polarize our societies and European society as a whole of two kinds. One is within societies, on both sides of the former divide. We have growing inequality and poverty, what has been mentioned. I mean, in Germany, 17% of children are registered as poor or living under conditions of near poverty, and this is increasing. The divergence within societies takes place on both sides, and it has an interesting and very worthy of further analysis regional aspect. The cities, the big cities, and that turns out also in electoral behavior, are more prosperous and more liberal. whereas the countryside and the small towns everywhere, France, Poland, Germany, Italy, north, south, anyway, there are these regional divides that policymakers are unable to even approach to even. Now, the framework in which all these problems need to be settled is that of more or less nominal liberal democracy.
Can I
yeah,
just,
okay.
Because I don't want to
What was my last point, yeah.
Okay, just one very quick follow-up question as to what you were saying. Do you think that is because the world has changed, including economically, or is it because we have been wrong in how we approach the whole thing? Have we changed the rules of the game during the game and defaulted on the Copenhagen criteria on either side? Or has the world simply changed and the initial 15 changed?
Well, both of this is true. The policies that were applied did not work as expected. And of course you have financial market crisis, you have what's called as globalization, financialization of social policies, many aspects, and I could go on, but I should not, I understand. So let me just make a link to liberal democracy. Liberal democracy is a set of institutions based on party competition, elections, and a representative government, and so on, which is, as we read in all textbooks, something, and in the speeches of presidents and chancellors, is something that is based on compromise. Well, that is right, but before we have compromise, we have struggle, we have conflict, we have disagreements over ideas, over interests, and over identities, the 3 I's, right? And compromise is meaningless if you do not presuppose conflict and struggle. And the big question, I think, for analyzing the present and predicting the future is this struggle taking place on a level playing field? Or is it biased? Is it unfair? Is it limited in the sense that people do not see the opportunity to write the right question and register their interests, identities, and ideas?
Thank you very much. And you know, I somehow have to turn to Andor David because I think one of the things Hungary, at least through Viktor Orbán, has claimed to be doing lately is to try and make the playing field level, to try and reassert Central Eastern Europe's right to be an equal participant in whatever negotiations on the future of the EU. Do you feel that there is an imbalance that needs to be sorted through? Or do you feel that we are discussing something else in how Central Eastern Europe can or cannot contribute to whatever reform of the European Union takes place?
Thank you, Anna. Welcome, everyone. Yes, I mean, I'm very pleased to be in this panel, and I would see this topic also be discussed maybe in Brussels or in some other Western European capitals, because it's a very actual topic. First of all, if I think about the European Union, I think that we are all members of it. We have been struggling, all the Central Eastern European countries, to become members of this union. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall 30 years ago, this was something that was uniting us and was uniting our politicians for this common goal, Euro-Atlantic integration. I disagree with with Professor Radičová concerning Poland, Hungary being autocratic countries. I mean, they are members of the Western Hemisphere, of the Western societies. European institutions have conducted several times pathfinding missions. They found nothing. all of the allegations are based on purely political standpoints. And I say this is okay, because this is part of the political debate that is going on at the moment in the European Union as well, concerning the future of Europe, in which the Central Eastern European countries, including the V4, are constitutive parts. Now, concerning that we have also this topic on the agenda, it's something that we should actually applaud and cherish, because we talk about it. V4, or Central Eastern European countries, they were not so much in the reflector. They were not so much on the table for many, many years, right after the enlargement of the European Union. Now suddenly we become important, and we are somehow expected to be at the table for giving contribution, and this is something to be welcomed. Socioeconomic differences in our countries. Well, yes, of course there are. In 30 years you can't really make miracles compared to GDP-GNI ratio, for instance, but let's don't forget that due to these differences that we are actually witnessing and cherishing the growth of our economies. This was the environment which attracted to our countries so many foreign direct investments, which brought the factories, which brought know-how, and helped to kick in our economies in various segments. Now that we would like to restructure our economies, being more added value productions, and striving to have also research and development departments, innovation into our economies. Now this is becoming a more tricky question, because it's going to restructure not only the strategical thinking of big multinational companies who have been investing to us, but we'll also need to have restructured our internal labor markets. So it's a big thing to consider in strategic terms for the future. Concerning your questions about Hungary would like to put back on an equal level. Of course, I think all of the responsible political leaders in our countries have this wish to be taken as an equal partner, not to have double standards, be that in food in your stores where you can buy local groceries, or sitting at the table and having a say on what kind of common foreign political decisions should be made. I mean, and let's be honest, I mean, V4 and Visegrad as a brand has been mostly put into the spotlight after the migration crisis started hitting our region. You have to understand that the past 30 years and also before, our region have had its own traumas, have went through a hell of a lot of difficult times, and I think in all of our countries, culture, identity is something that we have been fought for way too long, and they would like to enjoy this moment of sovereignty and independence.
But, you know, just again, very quick follow-up. I think we're facing two major challenges at the same time in Central Europe, and we're not the only ones to be facing them. One is protecting our own interests and you know, using our sovereignty to promote our interests within the EU. The other one is consolidating the EU as a whole. The question is, are we able and willing to do both? Because our fate is inextricably linked to the strength and existence of the European Union. And are we more tempted to undermine it from within by continuously saying no for the sake of promoting our interests, rather than understanding that the first thing at stake is the survival of the European Union and its efficiency as such? I
mean, our democratically elected governments obviously say no to those topics and those issues that would look forward into a result that would be not acceptable for them on the medium run. There is a huge debate in the European Union at the moment, also connected to the future of the European Union. Later, or some way back, you could call this the typical fight or debate between left and right, conservatives versus liberals. Now it's more a debate about federalists and conservatives, or sovereigntists in this case. So how the European Union and its institutions, the decision-making processes should look like, should be conducted in the future, it's a big debate. How much of sovereignty of authority you should delegate to Brussels, how much you should give up. And there is different approaches already in integration. There are some countries who are members of the Eurozone, there are some countries who are members of Schengen, there are regional groupings, Visegrad is one of them, but they are the Nordic countries, they are the Baltic countries, and you can name that. I think there is nothing bad about choosing different speeds of integration. We are all on the boat, and what is of utmost importance, and that we have the same direction, the same aim to reach. And I think this is what we should all agree upon, that we would like to have a united, strong Europe governed with strong member states. And
I will use this as a springboard to give the word to Slavomir as well, and I will give you the chance
to say one comment.
Only if it's really, really brief.
I really disagree with you in many issues. And first of all, there is a procedure from European Commission towards Poland, and it was before towards Hungary. Don't close our eyes. We are very sensitive if something have happened in democracy and legal state because we have had Machiarism. I know what I am talking about. And we cannot close the eyes if slowly, step by step, something is going on with public media, with constitution occurred, etc. If we close the eyes, one morning we wake up and we will see that democracy is out of the chimney. And I would kindly ask you not to close the eyes.
I have to reply to this. I'm sorry. No, please.
I don't want to turn this into a dialogue. So I will ask Slavomir to jump in, and then you will have a chance to continue the discussion. And Slavomir, I think the main question is, because the title is the Central Eastern Europe, whether we hold the key or not to the EU's future. Poland is one of the countries that really wants to be in the game, that really wants to be one of the decision makers and the drivers within the European Union. At the same time, you do take a very Central Eastern European approach to this, which doesn't always agree with the Western one. Now, just cynically speaking, and in realpolitik terms, how efficient do you feel that has been? Is this working within the EU that we have now, again taking into account from elections results to Poland's representation and its leverage within the European Union?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to come to Prague. Well, there is a long list of issues, and so let me just to say or offer to you some answers one by one. First, does Central Europe have a key to a European future? Yes, it does, provided that we understand that it is not the only one. Yes, there are many keys to European future, and yes, one important answer how the future of Europe may look like can be found probably here in this region. But there are other important keys. France, for instance, Germany. Definitely, there is no European integration without France. And so let me remind you that just a couple of months ago, President Macron gave an interview saying that in France they had a similar referendum to Great Britain, the result would be exactly the same. So we would have a France exit. So it is not, and I would say that without France, European Union is killed. I would even say that probably Hungary is not able to kill the European Union, but France is absolutely capable to do that. This explains my point and support my point that there are many keys, and we should find more than one solution for the future of the European Union. Then, about this relationship between West and the East. Of course, there are reasons, and I wouldn't mention here, because it's very often being done that we had very special historical experience here, we suffer a lot. Yes, that's true. It binds us very much, but we should also remind ourselves that all these countries play a very special role to hold the European project. We are borderlands. We are keeping borders. And of course, one may say that, okay, we stop migrants and that's a bad thing. But on the other hand, these countries, exactly these countries, are the most pro-enlargement countries in Europe. It is not Poland or Hungary which stop enlargement policy. It's France and Germany. And enlargement policy, ladies and gentlemen, was one of the strongest magnets of European Union at all during the last 30 years. One of the most effective policies we had. So I would encourage all of us to think in more complicated way, because Europe is more complicated. Then, of course, another issue which is important to mention. I mean, we are keeping also security of Europe in order. Without Poland, without Baltic states, without Romania, we would have lived in completely different circumstances and conditions. We are neighboring with the country which uses force as a tool of foreign policy. And because of Ukrainians wanted to join the European Union, they wage a war against Ukraine. And our let's say, very pro-European countries say that's okay. Yes, we should not provoke this country anymore. We should not offer the vision of European Union and the membership into integration, because it could provoke another war. I think that's the problem. I think without regaining our pure and the most powerful magnet, that those who share with our aspirations, those who would like to live in common European house, do have a chance to join. Without that, we would have a problem. And I'll stop here, because generally it creates another ground for discussion. It's not only that these countries create a problem; they create also solutions. There are other countries which create problems for at least our vision of European integration.
Thank you very much. Since we have 20 minutes to go, I would like to directly open the floor to questions. While you're thinking of your questions, I just want to very briefly allow Andor David to respond, because I stopped you earlier, yes. But just please make it brief.
Yeah, I will very quickly. Madam Radichova, I think you think about Article 7.
You want to invite me for coffee?
I will invite you for coffee in Bratislava.
No problem at all.
But you're thinking about Article 7
We
and
only have 20 more minutes to go, if you can bear with us.
Sargentini report, which is absolutely a political platform led by a fraction of the European Parliament. It's on a political level debate.
So
just this,
sure,
okay?
It's political debate.
Yes, it is, but we are talking about the facts and reality should be taken into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any contributions from the room?
Microphone?
Do we have a, yeah.
Thank you very much for this very interesting panel. My name is Andrea Pető. I'm coming from the Central European University, Budapest. The university which is going to exile from one European Union country to another one, from Budapest to Vienna. And I would like to address the members of the panel. Do you think that's the future of the European Union, that universities have to go to exile from one country to another? Thank you.
if you can also pass the mic over there, please put up your hand because you wanted to. And let's take more questions and then.
Konstantin Egert, working for Deutsche Welle. My question is to the panelists. I don't know, probably Slavomir will answer that. There was much debate in the last few years, looking at what happens in Poland and Hungary, as to what kind of a EU we're talking about. Are we talking about the EU where nation states kind of reassert their rights and there is a common vision for the future which is being cobbled together as a compromise of states? Or it's a transcendent sort of thing and in the end there's some kind of pan-European thing which does not really have a lot to do with what national governments think about the present and the future. And by the way, that also concerns enlargement, which I think is an extremely important thing, looking at things from where I look at them from. So is it still a viable debate, basically, about the structure of the union? Yeah, who is playing which role?
Thank you very much. Slavomir, I think you wanted to answer. You have your...
Okay, thank you. Something slipped my mind. About Central European University. I started in this university, and Andrea Petru was not my professor in that time, but we met that time in Budapest. So it was quite a long time ago, but let me not mention how many. Of course not. I think that's the policy of Hungarian government towards the EU is hardly readable. Of course, it's a pity because it was a kind of the excellent, even from the point of view of national interest of Hungary, it was an excellent promotional tool. So, and that's really pity that it happened. About this, whether it's a value or not. Well, we should ask ourselves first and foremost, do we believe in democratic system really? If we do, we should also understand that it is a self-regulating system. Of course, the governments come to power and lost power. Those who come to power and make too many mistakes are simply outvoted by the voters. That's the way how democracy works. And we should really believe, we should really, follow our beliefs. If we think that democracy is a self-regulating system, we should be very careful to intervene from outside, because that creates, let's say, unstable conditions, and that interference makes the things worse. I would claim. Poland is quite a good case. The PiS government was under fire, and for good reasons sometimes, by all possible sides. But now we would have in our parliament really nationalists. Because they claim that PiS government is simply following Brussels too closely. It's too friendly to Israel, it's too friendly to the United States, and too less friendly to Russia. Now we would have representation of this political force in our parliament. And one of the reasons is that there was this quarrel between Brussels and Warsaw, which was politically exploited by political forces. It is a democracy at work. If government is in trouble, opposition would use it. And I'm not quite sure that it would be the right side of the opposition. You love it. Not necessarily.
But because I think yes, absolutely. Please, just let me throw something more into the mix and build on something I think you mentioned earlier, or Klaus. political representation, because Slavomir mentioned democracy. And if you can also try to touch on the idea that he just mentioned about opposition, well, I think we have just seen in Budapest and the big cities, when the opposition gathered around a single candidate, they did manage to make gains. When the opposition in Poland decided to support a single candidate, they did make gains. So the thing is, do citizens in Central Eastern Europe actually enjoy political representation? Do we have this as an instrument of democracy? Or has the opposition kind of scrambled to regain its connection with the electorate, and it is the fault of politicians that they haven't been able to oppose the government, the government proposed line?
If you give a simple answer to a complicated question, the answer is always wrong. But I have no chance, only to try to be brief. So it will be not complete truth. I apologize. First of all, what is the background why CU had to move? Attack against Soros. Because political leadership and representation put all the responsibility for migration to this poor old guy. Soros. One man who arranged whole migration to whole Europe, unbelievable. But it's true that this has worked in Hungary. Once more, these elections to the cities and self-governments was based on the fear from migrants. Once more. Same attempt wanted to use our former Prime Minister in Slovakia, Mr. Fico, and it didn't work. It didn't work. Depends, I think, on the force of civic society. If they are really open to this kind of ideology, and what the opposition is really doing face to face to this kind of fight. To return to your question, yes, leaders. What we need more? That they have their ethic and professional. That's all what we wish. And if there is not such a person, if there is still the fight among the leaders who is more dirty, then the reaction of citizens is, oh, they are all the same, dirty, corrupted, no moral. It doesn't matter whom I will vote. So they are looking for some kind of their everyday life personal benefits. That's the reaction. I understand it, it's normal. If the fight is based on personal fights to destroy total integrity and identity of any kind of leader. This is going on not only in Central Europe. We have seen it now in Spain, we have seen it in Italy, we have seen it in Austria, we have seen it all around Europe. And my question is an answer to your comment. What's going on with us? What's wrong? I'm not so sure I know the right answer. We are discussing to find it. But I see several reasons. And I once more will start with the reason of freedom, which means life chances. People answer that their life chances are closed. There is a first, after Second World War generation with lower life chances that their parents, they are feeling they are lost. So they are open to any kind of security. And if there is a voice which offers them any kind of security, they are prepared to vote. in the world of so many insecurities. And together with this informative chaos around us, who is saying the truth? We are totally lost.
I know that our two other speakers want to jump in.
to
and
explain that it's more.
I apologize for interrupting you, but I also want, before giving them a chance, to take another two questions here. I'm sure they will contribute and add a bit more to the debate.
Thank you. My name is Samuel Zubo. I came from Slovakia. I'm living here in Czech Republic 13 years ago, and I have to mention one more thing. It's not only about if we are in a democracy. We really need to use the constitutional right to vote. There is about 15 million of people, of citizens of European Union, which are living in another country as in home country. And we are facing to the big issues. Even if we see another countries where the state is working good, we have no possibility to influence somehow our home countries. And it's a big issue. Especially in Slovakia, there is about 10% of people, they are all the time, they are just studying or working, living, or just traveling to abroad in the time of elections. So we have just one possibility to go back, to travel back, and it's not very easy.
Do you have a question to the speakers?
Yes, so the question is what we can do to really participate.
To improve diaspora voting.
Yeah, we should
right?
change the way in European Union how to participate.
Thank you very much. Let me also pass the microphone over there.
Hi, thank you. Wojciech Przybylski, Visegrad Insight, analysis debate platform on Central Europe. One quick remark and then a question. Central Europe benefited enormously from global circumstances and especially the end of the Cold War. It opened the opportunity for not only liberalization but national freedom. Sovereignty was at the beginning of 1989 the big question that drove the changes, and it's often overlooked in the case of Central Europe. It was strive to be independent. Now, but this independence was conditioned on the existence of European Union, the promise of President George Bush on Europe whole and free. How do you see these seemingly conflicting ideas of sovereignty and the liberal international world order today that is shaking from Central Europe? What sort of potentially other world order, is there any other world order that Central Europe could benefit from for the years to come? And what is that? Or Central Europe should somehow redefine its own understanding of sovereignty and see the institutions of international world order
Thank you very much. Let's start with Klaus Offe and then Andor David. And please use this opportunity to give your final remarks as well.
Okay. I mean, I would not call it a pity, the CEU affair. It is a scandal, and it is painful that we were not able to prevent this, although some efforts were made. They were not successful, they were not enough. Terrible event, and it should not be allowed to repeat itself anywhere. And that's all I can say to this. On your question, do we have the phenomena of renationalization, intergovernmentalism instead of federalism, a strengthening of borders? Yes, we have phenomena like that, and they do not come only from the Central East European region, but they are concentrated there. And on the other side, and maybe uncharacteristically optimistic note, I would say that the common European problems, energy, climate, transportation, communication, security, commerce, what have you, and a few others, including migration, are so urgent that national solutions will not be sufficient. And that will be, this is a painful learning process, and we are in the middle of it. However, one should also say that without opening the can of worms of populism, right? We can see that a pathology of politics in our times, in Europe and on the other side of the Atlantic as well, is that elites, Trump, Johnson, Orban, whoever, have begun to discredit their own institutions. Trump is speaking of their secret services as the deep state that cannot be trusted, you know, and is spreading the deinstitutionalization, if you wish, of political life through the elites. Johnson not respecting a law that has just been passed by the House of Commons, right? This, together with the spreading of fear and the strengthening of a sense of fear, is a dual pathology of our political life that can cause the destruction of many things, including the European Union.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the other side.
Thank you. Concerning just one comment on CEU, I mean, I feel bad about CEU myself, as I'm a graduate from CEU as well. But as far as I know, not whole CEU moved to Vienna. Some departments moved.
No.
And
I wish you were right, but you are not.
All of them?
All of
well, I didn't know them because I think they are still on Nador Street. Well, yeah, I guess so. So, because we as the fund, we are still also supporting programs in the CEU. We are actually financing fellowships in the CEU archives, and we will continuing to do so. Well, political participation. You know, it's as more people are living better in a country, less they would be triggered by political, I guess, political movements, and they become more and more apolitical. You can see this, there is a correlation. However, there are some solutions, like making voting mandatory, for instance, like Greece does. So that could be a solution. Or attracting people to the polling stations with electronic voting systems. So whatever new technology is possible to implement, maybe with blockchain technology that is difficult to manipulate. Well, concerning the world order, your question, I see that there is a big change in big players in the world. Like a few years ago still, or let's say 10, 15 years ago, the United States still could act as the policeman of the world. Wherever it was the safeguardier of international law. Now what you see that the United States is pulling itself out of certain international arenas, and some other big actors are taking place in it. And yes, there is, for instance, also in the UN Security Council, almost all the permanent members are in a somehow breaching international law, and it became almost like a common phenomenon, and also universally accepted, because there is no one who would implement or who would safeguard international law. The big question that is newly forming world system, what the European Union would act. And this is the moment maybe of maturity. It's the moment of the European Union has to get itself together. And as we started this debate, and this is the topic of it, what Central Europe can actually offer and contribute to the European Union as the more decisive, self-confident player in this new world order.
Thank you very much.
Really one sentence.
Since I got this nice message, please make it 1 minute maximum.
In the minute zero, I will send.
I guess I will not reply.
No reply to you. I promise. The comment is, all of us using the word Brussels decided, Brussels has done. Brussels doesn't exist. Brussels is the connection of all member states based on sovereignty and trying to find common future for all of us. We all are responsible, and the future of EU is our task, our game, and our force to put the will and good spirit to our common project. And I believe we can do it. So do it together and don't quarreling all the time.
I am almost tempted to end exactly on this note, but Slavomir, if you do have a last word, make it quick.
I can only support this view, maybe adding one footnote, that the European integration was triggered by European nations. And this project cannot be reinvigorated without nations. Full stop.
Thank you very much. I will only add one sentence, considering the time is indeed up, just noting as the moderator that at least half of the questions have focused on internal problems to Central Eastern Europe, not necessarily on our contribution to the European Union. So maybe that is something to also keep in mind, that we will probably be more able to make a contribution and not see Brussels as something external to us once we have finalized our reflection process on our own internal issues. Thank you very much to all panelists for a lively discussion, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.